Hey, deserving listeners, 90-Day Fiancé. My name is Dr. Kirk Honda. I'm a therapist and a professor. As I always say, you don't use YouTube as a replacement for therapy. If you need a therapist, get one. You deserve it. Let's watch.
How now, brown cow? Yay!
Yeah. So vocal classes, vocal exercises are really quite silly, but it's important. It's like before you're going to play an NBA game or something, you would stretch and you would run through some reps. It's the same with your voice. You know, resting state of our voice is not conducive to the challenges to the system when one sings, particularly if you have a louder kind of singing style, which is, you know, not louder, but a more typical, you know, even if you're a whisperer. Anyway, for the longest time, I would never do vocal exercises before performing, and it would just really destroy me. And it would go badly, but once I learned some techniques, it went a lot better. Also, you have to, like you're working out, you have to work out your diaphragm, you have to work out your muscles. I remember when I was in choir in high school, our very charismatic jazz and choir teacher, whenever we seemed like without oomph in our singing, she would threaten to make us run around the track outside to say, if you all don't put your diaphragm behind this, you're going to have to run around the track a few times to get into it. You know, get that diaphragm going. You got to stretch out those ribs. So anyway, that's what she's doing.
You feel warmed up?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, good.
We have a lot going on. In just a few days, Andrei's dad will be arriving from Moldova. And today I'm meeting with a voice coach because...
And those kinds of exercises, although I don't do, are important to get your mouth warmed up, also to get used to how things feel. It's really weird when you actually study vocal performance and technique. You have to be very aware of like every muscle, and there's like hundreds of muscles. Probably, I don't know how many muscles there are, but there's probably like 45 muscles that you have to consciously get used to manipulating, because normally you're just speaking or just singing the way that you would talk, and there are certain vowels that you require the throat to be a certain way, the tongue to be a certain way, your mouth. I remember it was just so unnatural. I remember our teacher saying that whenever you're singing a vowel, which is most of the time, because in one way you could just say that singing is just elongating your vowels. You know, instead of saying hello, you say hello, you know. Anyway, but the way that you have to have your mouth is I think she said you have to have 2 fingers width whenever you're singing. Yeah. It just feels so unnatural, but that's how, according to sort of classic singing style, is when it sounds the best.
I realized that I really want to sing. And if I want to start singing in front of people regularly, I need to build up confidence in myself and my voice. And I'm excited to see where it goes from here.
Yeah, and that's another reason why in a class or even on your own, you would do these sorts of exercises as a way, because often, particularly people that are shy or are at the beginning of their singing excursion or path, they will, especially in front of others, they will hold back, and they don't know they're holding back. We've been taught this too, and I guess psychologically we can all think about this because it applies to everything in life really, which is that unconscious to us or even conscious to us, when we are unsure of ourselves, when we're insecure, when we're not comfortable, particularly if we are told, and really all of us have been told to shut up, to be invisible, to keep quiet, to not make waves. You know, all of us have been given too many messages around that. I mean, you could argue a few individuals haven't been told that enough, but even then, I would imagine that they have some issues. So part of our healing around that is to push past that, to embody ourselves, to become empowered, to stand tall, to, you know, so many typical ways. There's so many different ways that this manifests, but in one way in singing is that they'll actually constrict their throat. They won't put their diaphragm behind it. They'll have shallow breathing. They won't resonate through their whole instrument, you know, all of their sinuses and their chest. You know, they'll real breathy kind of singing, and And I mean, unless that's your thing, it's typically not very appealing to listen to, and it's hard to actually sing on key because you're not putting enough air through the system. And so singing, for a lot of people, if you've ever been down that road or you're a vocal coach, you know that you have to spend a lot of time getting people past that, where you're just like, I want you to stop thinking about being too loud. I want you to stop even trying to sing on key. I just want you to scream or yell as loud as you can. And this can be extremely therapeutic. Vocal coaching and vocal classes can, 75% of it can just be the emotional catharsis and just like, I'm okay. It's okay to speak. It's okay to yell. It's okay to take up the audio space of this room. And someone wants me to do that. And I'm not imposing myself. I'm not being annoying. I'm not being told to shut up anymore. A big part of a lot of, I think, reasons why people want to express themselves through creativity is a part of that. So similarly, if you're doing public speaking, you have to perhaps practice that as well. But even in other ways that it manifests, like some people will crouch a lot because they're trying to blend in, and standing tall. And there's a lot of science and pseudoscience around this. A famous study came out a while back, if you remember, where if you do the superhero stance, then science shows that on average, people will experience greater outcomes. If you do the superhero stance before you go on stage, I think it was the experiment, you will be more liked by the people. You'll be more confident while you're on stage. I can't remember the exact design, but it had to do with the superhero stance. And then later, I think from my memory, it came out that through application, they didn't find an effect on that. But that doesn't say that having certain attitudes, even in your body, and having experiences where you take notice of your body, of your mind, how you approach things. Are you constantly on your heels in a situation, or are you leaning in and saying, and do you have people around you that don't try to push back on you when you do lean forward in life? So, there's crouching, there's, restricting your voice, there's shallow breathing, there's putting your head down, averting your gaze, there's walking tentatively with people, always avoiding places where you might impose on other people's lives, overly so. Even in language, passive language. Also at work, if you will avoid speaking up in a meeting or something, or there's just all these different ways that it manifests. And there's balance to life. You don't want to be annoying to everyone around you, but on average, I would say the vast majority of people could use a little boost and a little of empowerment in this area. So she is talking about that.
So my first voice coach was amazing. I started lessons with him when I was like 15.
Yeah.
But I took my money straight from work and gave him my entire paycheck to just afford lessons. And through my life, I feel like singing is some sort of therapy for me.
Yeah, it's definitely therapy.
Yeah, I mean, not for everyone, but certainly for a lot. And I think most people would report that it serves some emotional purpose. What purpose? I'm sure it's different for different individuals. For some, it could be extremely therapeutic, right? And what I'll say for myself is I, as a child, grew up in church, a Christian church, a 70s hippie-ish sort of Christian church that didn't have the associations you might have today with Christians, like oppression of others, bigotry towards queer individuals, that kind of thing. We, from my memory, were just all about love and forgiveness and love your neighbor, be nice to people, lead by example, community, charity, a huge dedication to charity, and introspection. In fact, the roots of my approach in life and as a therapist and as a podcaster, you can directly tie back to the lessons that were taught to me in church when I was young about love and warmth and compassion for everyone, right? And those were Christianity is to some extent and even the Bible is a wide open field for interpretation. You know, two different groups of religious individuals will interpret it in completely different ways. And of course, there are thousands of sects or groups of Christians around the world, and that doesn't include all the other religions anyway. For what I was taught and what I was exposed to, from what I remember, it was a lot of that. And part of that was through singing. And it was taught to us that through the congregation singing and worshiping and doing something together in joy, you know, expressing an emotion of some kind, you know, of reverence or of self-reflection or of appreciation or of doing something together with your family and with the other people in church was a big part of the church experience and of the meaning of it. And so I was young and indoctrinated into that system from the time I was 2 years old, and you know, so every Sunday, and we would go to church every Sunday, and my siblings are there, and my parents, and a big part of the experience for me anyway was the singing. In fact, I can remember, you know, you just do this every Sunday. I can remember the schedule of Sunday services, which soon after the singing was when the sermon began, where the minister gives a 45-minute sermon. And maybe that's where I got my yammering from. But anyway, I was completely bored with the sermon. I was always just like, ugh, this is so boring. But the singing part was my favorite because it was fun, and I would look at the hymn book and I could kind of figure out where the notes were, and I liked singing. I didn't think I was any good, really, of course, because I'm just a kid, but it was enjoyable. And I remember hearing some more advanced singers, they would be harmonizing. And I'm like, I know they're singing different notes, and it always makes it sound better. And like, what's going on? But you know, I just never really knew. Eventually, I actually started playing the recorder, you know, the like little flute-like thing, and I really loved it. And then I started playing trumpet, really loved that, really got into that. And then eventually I started getting into all these other instruments. But anyway, so in high school, I started actually writing music just without any instruction or any guidance. You know, there's no YouTube back then. I was just completely on my own, and I had this really old guitar that had one string. I think it was my uncle's, and it was just a piece of crap, but it had one string on it, and I would kind of pluck out things that I thought might sound okay. And the stuff I wrote back there was really weird. It didn't follow any convention. Like, I didn't know how keys worked and modes worked. You know, I just would go like, well, I think that's okay. And, you know, some of it was kind of weird anyway. But I would sit there, you know, in high school, 15, 16 years old, for the very first time, playing guitar and writing music and singing.
Not another cloudy sky I will encounter. You made it rainy every day, and people say wider.
It's a very emotional time, right? High school. There's a lot of emotions. There's a lot of concerns. There's a lot of new feelings. There's a lot of pressures. And the feeling I got from music and singing, I guess in particular, but really all music. And the thing that I learned was that it didn't have anything to do with the lyrics. In fact, I'm not a good lyricist, but I do like melody and songwriting. And so when I was writing music, I would often not write lyrics until almost before recording. In fact, fast forward 10 years and we're in the studio with my band, I would suddenly realize, oh crap, we're going to record this song today. I better write down some lyrics, because often I would just sort of ramble words that didn't even make any sense on stage, because when you're playing in clubs in Seattle, the sound system was so bad that no one understood what you were saying anyway. So I would just always procrastinate the lyric writing. But once you start recording, you can actually start hearing the words. So anyway, it was the emotion though, that the chords and the movements and the vibe and the rhythm and the groove and the melody and the harmonies and how it felt to me. You know, a lot of songs that I love, I don't know what the lyrics mean. Sometimes I don't even pay attention. In fact, often my wife, Stacy, will be listening to a song and we'll be singing along, and I'll hear her actually say the actual words, because for 35 years I've been singing this song and I'm just sort of making up this gibberish syllable salad, but never stopped to think, like, what are they actually saying? We were doing this to, I think, a Fleetwood Mac song, and Stacy, my wife, actually sang what sounded to me to be an actual lyric, and I was like, oh, and this happens often. I'll be like, oh, is that the lyric to that song? That's interesting. And she's like, and sometimes she's like, I don't know, that's just what, but it always sounds more accurate. So my point is that for me, therapy-wise, I always found that song, emotion, singing, and even just singing along with music that I like, especially if I don't know what it's about, the emotion it evokes is sometimes an emotion that you can't put a word to, like sad, happy, angry feeling, or rageful happiness, or I don't know. It's not even really combos of emotions. For people out there that are artists of various different kinds, I'm guessing you can relate, or people who appreciate art. There are primordial emotional globs that can, I think, only be accessed or at least elongated in terms of their experience. You might have little blips of the experience, but when you have the full 3.5 minutes of a song, I don't know, and I get chills thinking about it. And it's really a euphoric feeling to be able to just feel that feeling and express it and live in it and feel like the artist might understand it too, right? If you're singing along with someone else's music, you feel like you're understood. And I think this is why teenagers love music so much. I mean, of course, everyone loves music, but typically when you're a teenager, you love music because you have all these emotions, you have all these experiences, and it's hard to connect. It's hard to know what's happening. And you hear these songs, maybe even if you pay attention to the lyrics, you're just like, this person gets me. Now, often I think we're just projecting. We're just, projecting our own experience onto what they're expressing. Because if you actually went to the artist and explained how you interpret it, they'd be like, that's not how I meant it, but I'm glad you interpret it that way. And that could be a bummer sometimes. But I think more importantly, it's therapeutic to be able to have those emotions, perhaps having a semi-fantasy of it being validated to some extent, having maybe even a congregational experience. If you're at a concert or you're with your friends and you're all listening to music, it makes us feel connected. It makes us feel validated. It makes us get in touch with things that we often don't talk about, things that we can't talk about, meaning that there are no words to describe what art can describe. I think that's why we have art, because our language and our ability to articulate things are too limiting, way too limiting. And the art, you see a painting that gives you a feeling, and it's just like you can't even begin to put into words why you love this painting, why you even paint. Why is it even that you do that thing? It's a deeper, richer, more complicated experience. And so for me, when I would write, when I would sing, that's a lot of it. And I also think that, for me anyway, if I were just to talk about an experience, and this is, of course, for the creative arts therapies, art therapy, music therapy, these kinds of fields, it's a testament to how they are effective in other ways for therapeutic means, that when we talk about something like, this thing happened to me a while back, you can access the emotions, you can grieve, you can get support, you can let a lot of things out. But in addition to that, as an adjunct to that, as a parallel benefit to that, you can actually create something or sing along with a song that feels similar to that and get even more out, right? It's not like we would replace the talking with music, but sometimes we want to do a lot of different things that allow us to fully express and feel and be heard and to fully process what is happening to us. And for me, that's what music is. Like I can go through an experience and have it be, say, really sad for me, and I can talk about it, I can cry about it, I can think about it. And when I hear a song or I write a song about it, it is also this whole other zone of processing and emotional expression, and sometimes deeper, can sometimes just go straight to the experience for me. It's like this immediate unearthing of what's happening for me. And so that's me rambling about how music for me throughout my life, again, even when I was a child, is helpful to me. And so I encourage y'all to, one, know your needs, two, to express yourself and to get validation, to feel okay, to find your zone that you are able to express yourself. And I'm sure a lot of you can relate to this in terms of creativity and art. And three, to do it, right? To not just think that talking alone is necessarily the whole thing. Also, if you're interested, I know some of you are, in entering the field of psychotherapy, there are these disciplines: art therapy, dance movement therapy, drama therapy, music therapy. And if you want more information, we have episodes on the website, and I'm pretty sure on YouTube, about music therapy, dance movement therapy, art therapy, drama therapy, sand play therapy. And it could be a jumping off point to learn more information.
But it also scares me because, like, it's weird for me for someone to just be like, okay, go ahead and sing, let's hear it. I'm just like...
Oh, and yoga therapy as well. You can go to our website, go to the episode page where it lists all the 1,500 episodes, and just do a search by therapy. You'd probably get a lot of hits, but if you kind of scroll down, you might eventually get to all the different forms of therapy that we have covered on the podcast. Improv therapy is also coming to mind. Really great episodes, I think, and interesting.
We got to get you a little more confident. It should be fine if you know for sure it's going to sound good.
In terms of like singing, no one else in my family does it. So I definitely felt like a black sheep in the family. And I don't feel like I was ever really supported. I feel like I was more like ridiculed than anything else.
Yeah, it seems that way. And that can be true for a lot of people, particularly if you have traditional parents, sort of mainstream parents in the United States, and especially if you're getting into it when you're a teenager, because it could seem like a distraction. Parents are concerned about career and that kind of thing. And yeah, it makes me sad for her. For me, on the other hand, I not only in church was singing with my family, and I considered everyone, my older siblings and my parents, to actually be pretty proficient singers. There was a lot of music in our house, a lot of singing along with The Muppet Show and Sesame Street and that kind of thing. And so there was that, but also my grandmother, my father's mom, Japanese American, born in the States, by the way. I don't know why I always have to point that out, but I just always want people to know that Asian Americans have been here for a long time. And I say this because a white person found out. I met her and mentioned that I was Japanese American. And then she said, "Oh, were your parents born in the United States?" And it's an innocent question. But it was like the first thing she asked me. I point this out because not only will people assume that if you're Asian American, you're recently emigrated, which, some are, but many aren't, like myself. My ancestors have been here for 120 years, my Japanese side, and my white side's been in the United States since the 1600s. The overall notion of because you're recently emigrated, thus you're not a real American. Real Americans are white, and it's just like, no. At least the majority of the citizens of the United States are all immigrants, because aside from the Native Americans, all of y'all and all of us have had all of our ancestors colonialize, immigrate, invade, take over. So anyway, it's just a rant. But my Japanese American grandmother was primarily known for her singing. And maybe I'll show a picture of her here. All right, well, that does it for that episode. Everyone out there, please take care of yourself because you deserve it. You really, really do.